Hello everyone. This is our first lecture overview, and what I want to do with these lecture videos is sort of set you up for the important parts of the lecture to pay attention to as you're going through the notes. So these lecture videos are not exhaustive. I'm not going to go through every single slide and every single point in the lecture. What I'm going to do instead is I'm going to give you a general summary of what the lecture is about, and then I'm going to hit on 5 key points of the lecture. Then at the end, we'll review what we've discussed, and then I'll give you any further information that you might need. So we're going to start off these lecture videos with basically a quick introduction. And in this case, we'll start with our first chapter, which is a good place to start because this chapter really sets us up for what we'll be learning this semester. So it essentially is a way to understand how humans interact with their environment and how those interactions are largely responsible for some of the environmental problems that we're currently facing. So that's what we're going to talk about actually now. And the first point that I want to hit on is the fact that we have essentially what your textbook refers to as this world in crisis. We know that Earth essentially is the only thing that is sustaining our lifestyle. What I mean by that is that everything we need to survive, to meet our basic needs, food, water, shelter, and space, is being provided for by planet Earth. And if we're no longer able to do that, if the Earth is no longer able to provide what we're calling the raw material and the energy for life, then we are in a lot of trouble. And when I say we, I don't just mean we as humans, I mean every other living thing on this planet. So key point number 1 to look out for in this chapter is that humans are the most significant agent of environmental change. We do more to alter our surroundings, our environment, than any other living thing does. And we can, of course, come up with examples of animals that change their environment. We can talk about how beavers construct dams and they can alter the course of a river, for example. We can talk about how ants and other insects can change soil composition and things like that. But really, humans are the number one agent when it comes to our changing planet. And we do this in a variety of different ways. And these are things that we'll talk about as the semester continues, how we have an overpopulation and we consume a lot of resources and we destroy environments and things like that. So, significant point number 2 in this chapter is the growing number of humans puts a big strain on the environment. You can kind of think of the number of people on this planet as kind of exacerbating or extending all of the other problems that we face. There's just so many of us. Our population as humans is growing very, very quickly, and not only are we growing quickly, but we consume things, and as we consume things, food, water, energy, materials, we make all of this waste. All of this is a burden to the environment. So as we look towards the future, we know that there's going to be more people added to the population. So the question becomes, how do we meet the needs of a growing population without straining the planet's resources? And that's key point. Actually, I'm going to just skip over this real quick. That's key point number 3 in this chapter is humans use resources. So what are resources? Well, resources come in one of 2 varieties, what we call non-renewable and renewable. And resources are the things that we're building our livelihoods on. So the food that we need to eat, the water that we need to drink, the energy that we need to power our vehicles. All of those things are types of resources. Some are in a limited supply, certain types of minerals that we mine from the ground, or fossil fuels, for example. Once they are gone, gone, we can never replenish them. They can never come back. Other types of resources are what we call renewable or potentially renewable, things that if we use them carefully, they'll always be around. Solar power, water, soil, forests. These are things that even if we cut trees down, we can regrow trees as long as we do so in a what we call sustainable manner, which simply means we're keeping an eye on the future and saying, if I cut this tree down now, as long as I replace this tree in the future, we can use it again. These types of resources, however, are very easy to what we call exploit. We take for granted the clean air that we breathe, and we take for granted the clean water that we drink. And if we're not careful with how we manage these resources, they might not be available in the future. I'm going to skip over that. I'm going to move on to significant point number 4 in this chapter, and that's the idea of sustainability. What is sustainability? We'll talk about it again in chapter 2, but essentially what we're talking about is being able to provide and meet the needs of the current population, the current generation of people on this planet, but also being able to meet the needs of future generations. So we're not taking too much, we're taking just enough, and we're leaving some for future generations. That's the idea. And if we do this, if we can live on this planet sustainably, then the resources that we have here could potentially go on indefinitely. Now, that's not to say those non-renewable resources, but at least the renewable ones. I'm going to skip over these slides, but these are just kind of giving you some ideas of some of the global issues that we will be covering in this chapter. We'll talk about, in this, not this chapter, but in this class, we're going to talk about issues like global warming. We're going to talk about deforestation. We won't talk about oceans. Unfortunately, that's one chapter that doesn't make the cut, but we'll talk about water and water availability. And we'll talk about ozone depletion and things like that. The last point that the key topic that I want to cover in this particular chapter is what we're studying, actually. This is where environmental science comes in. And what environmental science really is, it is a study of our relationship with other organisms and the physical environment. So as environmental scientists, what we do is we study how humans are impacting different things, such as how we're impacting the oceans, how we're impacting the rainforest, how we're impacting air and water and everything else. So how are human actions actually impacting those? And it's also combining lots of different fields. So this is a biology class, but we're going to talk a little bit about chemistry, and we're going to talk a little bit about physics, and a little bit about agriculture, and politics and ethics and things such as that. As environmental scientists, what are our goals? We want to establish principles about how the natural world functions, and we want to identify, understand, and solve problems that we have created. So that's really a key focus here. It's one thing to say the ice caps are melting or the ozone is being depleted and to cry about it, but let's be practical. What can we do about it? And that's what one of the goals of environmental science is to step in and give practical solutions to people to be able to actually solve or combat some of these problems that we face. That's all for this chapter. Again, please go back through and make sure you understand the rest of the content that is in this presentation. This is the format that you're going to continue to see throughout the semester. They're going to be short 10-minute, what I call lecture overviews. They're not exhaustive, but they're meant to point key principles out in every chapter, things that you'll want to focus on. Also, going forward, there will be a lecture review slide at the end of each of my lecture notes, and that's going to be where you want to particularly pay attention to those topics and vocabulary and make sure that you understand those going forward.